Let's focus on the Hersey and Blanchard model. These authors will basically focus on two types of behavior. They are going to focus on behaviors that have to do with consideration and on behaviors of the leader that have to do with structuring, so that we will have two possible dimensions that when crossed will give us four leadership styles. Directing is characterized by many structuring behaviors, but very few of consideration, and supporting, for example, is many behaviors of consideration but very few of structuring. Coaching and delegate, since you already know the logic with which it would work. The model presents these two dimensions to us. It tells us what the four styles are, and it proposes a bell that depends on the maturity of the followers, which would be this scale that you have below, identifying which is the maturity of our followers. We would go up on the vertical axis until it hits the bell, and then it would tell us what is the right leadership style. That is, when maturity is low, the leadership model is directing. With an intermediate maturity, the leadership model is coaching. When the maturity is moderately high, it suggests the supporting style, and when your subordinates are very mature, then what it advises is to delegate. The challenge here is to know what it means for a subordinate or a collaborator to be mature. What do I have to look for? Well, the model proposes different dimensions. In this case, it concretizes it in four things that we should observe to decide the maturity of our subordinates. That fundamentally is related to if they want to do their task and if they know how to do their task. To the extent that they want to and know how to do it, they will be more mature, and to the extent that they don't want to and don't know how to do it, they will be more immature in Hersey and Blanchard's terminology. So you're identifying which characteristic most represents your subordinates. You choose the numbers that appear in this table, you add their numbers, and that takes you to the maturity scale, and from there you would decide which is the most appropriate style. Let's see it in an example. What style would the Hersey-Blanchard model suggest for a contributor with these characteristics? He has a passion for his work. His knowledge is limited, that if you help him he can perform more or less well and more or less efficiently. But he's not too prepared, too trained for the task. He's been 4 months in the job you're working with him, and he's a person that you've discovered that he's capable of taking responsibility even if he doesn't always recognize his mistakes. Sometimes he does, but sometimes he doesn't. What leadership style, directing, supporting, coaching, or delegating, would you choose in a situation like this? We would go first to assess the attributes of the situation. We see that you are a person who cares about your work. We would score 10 points. We would add the 5 points that corresponds to the fact that he has no knowledge, but with a little help it can work. We already have 15. He has been working for less than 6 months, so we add 0. We continue with the 15 points, and he is a person that assumes his responsibilities, although sometimes he is not able to hide his mistakes, so we add 8 points to the 15, and the total is 23. We would go to the graph of the model, and within this graph we would select the 23 point on the scale below. We would go up until we cut into the Gaussian bell, and from there we would decide what the style is, which is a style that is fundamentally coaching, almost being on the border of supporting. It's a style where you have quite a lot of structuring behaviors, moderately high structuring behaviors, and a lot of consideration behaviors, which in the end is what appears here a little bit like the recipe book that the model gives you. You have to explain to him what are the decisions that you've made, because he has to do those things. You have to remind him what things he has to do, because otherwise he won't be efficient in his work. But at the same time you are going to give him the opportunity to ask for clarifications, to ask you why that is, and you will give them the reasons and motives with which this person will be able to be more autonomous in the future, and at the same time you will be indicating to them when they are doing things right. You would be congratulating him when he is performing well. You would be encouraging him to continue training to be able to develop this task better in the future. At this point, I think you will be able to choose which is the most appropriate leadership style for a situation following Hersey-Blanchard's model or recommendations.